Hello.
I thought our marriage was unbreakable until that charity gala changed everything. One dance was all it took to reveal the truth. As my wife swayed in another man's arms, her eyes never once searched for mine in the crowded room. She danced with him as if I was invisible, completely oblivious that her world was about to shatter the moment I walked out those doors. Now she's desperate to explain, but some betrayals cut too deep for words to heal. My name is Connor Wallace. I'm 38 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed I had the kind of marriage other people envied. Rachel and I met in college, dated for 3 years, and tied the knot in a small ceremony overlooking Lake Michigan. We bought our first house together in the suburbs of Chicago, adopted a golden retriever named Duke, and talked about having kids someday when the timing was right. Rachel worked her way up at a PR firm downtown, while I built my career designing commercial buildings. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. We had date nights every Friday, spent weekends tackling home improvement projects, and took one big vacation each year. Our life wasn't glamorous, but it was ours, and I thought we were happy. My dad used to tell me, "Connor, a good marriage isn't about grand gestures. It's about choosing each other every single day." And I did choose Rachel every day, without question. Even when things got tough, even when we fought about the same trivial things over and over, I never once considered that our marriage might not be forever. Friends would complain about their relationships, and I'd silently thank my lucky stars that Rachel and I were different. We were solid, unshakable. At least that's what I believed until that charity fundraiser in April. It was one of those black tie events that Rachel's firm always handled, a Cancer Research Foundation gala at the Meridian Hotel downtown. Rachel had spent weeks helping organize it, and I was proud to be her plus one, even though these kinds of events usually bore me to tears. I rented a tux, polished my shoes, and prepared for an evening of mindless small talk with strangers while drinking overpriced champagne. If I could go back to that evening, would I have done anything differently? Would I have stayed home, made up some excuse not to go? Or would I have still walked into that ballroom, blissfully unaware that my entire life was about to implode? The truth is, I don't know. What I do know is that you can't unsee what's been seen. You can't unfeel the moment when you realize everything you believed about your life was built on quicksand. And you can't pretend that the person sleeping beside you for 12 years isn't capable of destroying everything you've built together with a single dance. The Meridian Hotel ballroom sparkled that night. Crystal chandeliers reflecting off polished marble floors, champagne flutes clinking, and the gentle hum of Chicago's elite discussing their latest philanthropic ventures. Rachel looked stunning in a deep blue gown that hugged her curves perfectly, her blonde hair swept up to reveal the diamond earrings I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. "You clean up nice, Wallace," she whispered, straightening my bow tie before we entered. Her perfume lingered in the air between us, familiar yet somehow distant, like a memory I couldn't quite grasp. The evening progressed predictably. I nursed the same glass of scotch while making small talk with strangers. Rachel flitted from group to group, completely in her element. Occasionally, she'd catch my eye across the room and smile, and I'd remember why I endured these events in the first place. Around 10, the live band started playing, and couples gravitated toward the dance floor. I was cornered by a retired architect who wouldn't stop talking about his glory days designing strip malls in the suburbs. Rachel had disappeared into the crowd, probably handling some last-minute crisis for the event. "Your wife does remarkable work," the man said, gesturing vaguely across the room. "The foundation's lucky to have her." I nodded politely and turned to look where he was pointing. That's when I saw them. Rachel was on the dance floor with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, dark-haired, with the kind of confidence that comes from old money or new success. His hand rested too comfortably on the small of her back as they moved to the music. It wasn't just a dance. I'd seen Rachel dance with colleagues before, professional, appropriate, forgettable. This was different. She was looking up at him with an expression I hadn't seen directed at me in years, a mixture of fascination and desire that made my stomach drop. What hit me hardest wasn't the proximity of their bodies, or even his wandering hands. It was how completely absorbed she was, laughing at something he whispered in her ear, completely oblivious to everything around them. She danced with him as if I was invisible, as if the room full of her colleagues and our mutual friends didn't exist. I waited for her to glance in my direction, to offer some acknowledgement that would ease the growing knot in my chest. But she never did. She was lost in a moment that didn't include me, with a man who clearly wasn't just a colleague. My body went cold despite the crowded room. I placed my empty glass on a nearby table and straightened my jacket. The architect was still talking, but his words were just noise now. I didn't make a scene. I didn't storm across the dance floor or demand explanations. Instead, I simply turned and walked toward the exit, wondering if she would even notice I was gone. I stood by the bar, watching Rachel and her dance partner glide across the floor. People moved around me, but I might as well have been a ghost. A waiter offered me another drink, and I accepted mechanically, never taking my eyes off the scene unfolding before me. The song changed to something slower, more intimate. This was when most casual dance partners would separate, return to their respective corners of the room. Instead, he pulled her closer, and Rachel, my Rachel, melted into him like she belonged there. I knew that look on her face. I'd seen it directed at me years ago when we were first dating, a mixture of desire and fascination, as if she couldn't quite believe her luck. Now it belonged to a stranger. Quite the event, isn't it? A voice broke through my thoughts. It was Marissa, one of Rachel's colleagues. Your wife did an amazing job putting this together. She always does, I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. Marissa followed my gaze to the dance floor. Her smile faltered. Oh, I see Adrian's here. I didn't realize he was invited. Adrian. The name hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't some random man. Rachel's dance partner had a name Marissa clearly recognized, and one that made her uncomfortable enough to quickly excuse herself. I watched them for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. His hand drifted lower on her back. He whispered something in her ear that made her throw her head back in laughter. His lips brushed against her neck for the briefest moment. So quick I might have imagined it, if not for the way her fingers tightened on his shoulder in response. This wasn't a first meeting. This wasn't even a flirtation. What I was witnessing was a familiar dance between two people who knew each other's rhythms all too well. I'd always prided myself on being level-headed, rational, the kind of man who didn't make scenes or jump to conclusions. But watching my wife in another man's arms, moving with a familiarity that spoke of more than friendship, something inside me cracked. I had two choices: confront them on the dance floor in front of Chicago's elite, creating the kind of scandal Rachel would never forgive, or walk away with what little dignity I'd left. I chose the latter. Setting my untouched drink on the bar, I straightened my jacket and made my way toward the exit. No dramatic gestures, no furious glances back, just one foot in front of the other until the cool night air hit my face and the sounds of the gala faded behind me. As I handed my ticket to the valet, I realized my hand was shaking. Not from anger, though there was plenty of that bubbling beneath the surface. No, they were shaking from the sudden, terrible realization that my marriage might have been over long before tonight. I just hadn't been paying attention. The valet returned with my car, and I tipped him generously, a habit Rachel always teased me about. You don't need to win friends with money, Connor, she'd say. I wondered briefly if Adrian was the kind of man who over-tipped, or if he was the entitled type who expected exceptional service without acknowledgement. I slid behind the wheel, but didn't start the engine immediately. The hotel's grand entrance was visible in my rearview mirror, guests still arriving fashionably late. I half expected, hoped, maybe, to see Rachel burst through those doors, calling my name, demanding to know why I'd left without saying goodbye. She didn't come. I drove aimlessly through downtown Chicago, the city lights blurring through the windshield as I tried to make sense of what I'd witnessed. Part of me wanted to believe I'd misinterpreted the situation, that they were just colleagues sharing a dance, nothing more. But that rational voice was drowned out by the memory of her face, of the way she looked at him, of how completely she'd forgotten my existence. Without consciously deciding, I found myself pulling into the parking lot of O'Malley's, a dive bar where Tyler and I had watched countless games over the years. It wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable and anonymous, the perfect place to nurse both a drink and wounded pride. The bar was half empty, a basketball game playing on the TV above the counter. I took a seat in the corner booth and ordered a whiskey neat. The bartender, a gruff man in his 50s who'd seen his share of men drinking alone, delivered it without unnecessary conversation. 2 drinks in, my phone buzzed. Rachel, Where are you? I've been looking everywhere. I stared at the screen, thumbs hovering over the keyboard. 2 hours. It had taken her 2 hours to notice I was gone. The charity event she'd spent weeks planning had been more important than the fact that her husband had vanished. Or maybe it wasn't the event at all. Maybe it was Adrian. I typed and deleted multiple responses before settling on the simplest one. Me out. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then reappeared. Rachel, are you okay? Did something happen? The audacity of her question made me laugh out loud, drawing a curious glance from the bartender. Did something happen? Only the complete destruction of everything I thought I knew about our marriage. I turned off my phone without responding and signaled for another drink. Rachel hadn't bothered to check on me for 2 hours. I could give myself at least that much time before dealing with whatever lies or excuses she prepared. As I nursed my third whiskey, I realized that what hurt most wasn't just the betrayal. It was the regret I didn't see in her eyes when I caught them dancing. It was knowing that in that moment, she hadn't spared me a single thought, and that felt like the truest end of our marriage. I lost track of time at O'Malley's. The crowd thinned as midnight approached, leaving just me, the bartender, and a couple of regulars watching the end of a West Coast game that nobody seemed to care about. My phone had been buzzing sporadically, Rachel's calls giving way to increasingly frantic texts. Another? The bartender asked, gesturing to my empty glass. I shook my head. Better not. Got any coffee? He nodded appreciatively and disappeared to brew a fresh pot. I wasn't drunk. 3 whiskeys over several hours wasn't enough to impair me, but I needed clarity. The fog of shock was wearing off, replaced by a sharp, focused anger that demanded action rather than escape. While waiting for the coffee, I finally checked my phone. 12 missed calls and a string of texts, each more urgent than the last. Rachel, are you coming back? Rachel, Connor, please answer me. Rachel, I'm getting worried. At least let me know you're safe. Rachel, please come home so we can talk. Rachel, I'm leaving the gala. I'll be home in 20. The last message had been sent over an hour ago. She was probably at home now, waiting. I imagine her pacing our living room in that blue dress, rehearsing whatever explanation she concocted. The thought made my stomach turn. The coffee arrived, strong and black. I thanked the bartender and considered my options. I could go home and confront her, but what would that accomplish tonight? We'd argue, she'd cry, I'd yell, or, worse, forgive her without understanding what I was forgiving. No, this conversation required daylight and sobriety from both of us. I pulled out my phone again and called the one person I knew would answer, no matter the hour. Connor. Tyler's voice was alert despite the late time. Everything okay, man? Not really. Can I crash at your place tonight? There was a brief pause. Yeah, of course. Rachel okay? The genuine concern in his voice nearly broke me. She's fine. We're not. I'll explain when I get there. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on Tyler's couch with a fresh cup of coffee, recounting what I'd witnessed at the gala. Tyler listened without interruption, his expression darkening as I described the dance, Adrian, and Rachel's complete disregard for my presence. Jesus, Con, he finally said, are you sure it wasn't just? Don't. I cut him off. Don't try to rationalize it. You didn't see them together. Tyler ran a hand through his hair. Okay, I believe you. So what's your plan? I don't know, I admitted. I need answers before I decide anything. You think she'll give you the truth? It was the question I'd been avoiding all night. Probably not initially, but I'll know if she's lying. My phone buzzed again, another text from Rachel. Rachel, please just let me know you're safe. I'm worried sick. I typed a quick response. Me, I'm safe. Staying at Tyler's. We'll talk tomorrow. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. A full minute passed before they reappeared. Rachel, I'm sorry. 2 simple words that confirmed everything while explaining nothing. You can take the guest room, Tyler said, watching me stare at the screen. It's not much, but the bed's comfortable. I nodded gratefully. Thanks. I might not sleep much anyway. Want me to come with you tomorrow? When you talk to her? The offer touched me. No, but thanks. This is something I need to do alone. As I lay in Tyler's spare bedroom that night, staring at the ceiling, I kept thinking about those 2 words. I'm sorry. Not, it wasn't what it looked like. Or, you misunderstood. Just sorry. Sorry for what, exactly? For dancing with him? For letting me see it? or for whatever had been happening between them long before tonight. I had a sinking feeling I already knew the answer. Morning arrived with unwelcome brightness, streaming through Tyler's guest room blinds. I'd slept maybe 3 hours. My dreams a confused jumble of ballroom dancers with Rachel's face in Adrian's hands. My phone showed 6 more missed calls from Rachel and a text from Tyler letting me know he'd left for his morning run, but that there was coffee in the kitchen. I showered, borrowed a clean t-shirt from Tyler's drawer, and faced the mirror. The man staring back looked older somehow, as if the events of the past 12 hours had accelerated time. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and stubble roughened my jaw. I looked exactly like what I was, a man whose life had just been upended. The coffee helped clear my head, and by the time Tyler returned, I had a plan. Not a good one, perhaps, but a plan nonetheless. "You look like hell," he observed, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. "Feel like it too. Thanks for letting me stay." Tyler leaned against the counter. "Anytime. You heading home now?" I nodded. "Need to get answers. And if you don't like what you hear?" It was the question I'd been turning over all night. "Then I'll have to decide what's worth saving." Tyler clapped me on the shoulder. "Call me later? Let me know you're okay." I promised I would and left, the drive home passing in a blur of rehearsed questions and anticipated answers. What would Rachel say? Would she deny everything? Minimize it? Confess immediately? Each possibility came with its own kind of pain. Our house looked exactly the same as I'd left it yesterday. A cruel reminder that life-altering revelations don't change physical reality. Rachel's car was in the driveway. I sat in mine for a moment, gathering courage, before finally walking to the front door. I found her in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, clutching a mug of tea. She looked up when I entered, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. She'd been crying. "Connor," she said, her voice hoarse. "Thank God. We need to talk," I said flatly, remaining standing even as she gestured toward a chair. "I know." She set down her mug. "About last night." "Who's Adrian?" I interrupted. Her face went pale. "How do you?" "Doesn't matter." "Who is he, Rachel?" She took a shaky breath. "He works with the foundation. We met a few months ago during the planning stages for the gala. And nothing. We're colleagues. Friends." I laughed bitterly. "Try again. Friends don't dance the way you two were dancing." "It was just a dance, Connor. You're overreacting." There it was, the minimization I'd expected. A dance so captivating you didn't notice your husband walking out of the room. I was busy. It was work. I had responsibilities, including responsibilities to the strange man with his hands all over you. Color rose in her cheeks. "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is watching my wife look at another man the way she used to look at me. What's not fair is realizing I've been missing signs for God knows how long." I took a deep breath. "I'm only going to ask this once, and I want the truth. Is there something going on between you and Adrian?" Rachel's eyes dropped to the floor, and in that moment, before she even spoke, I had my answer. "I don't know how to define it," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "Have you slept with him?" The question burned my throat. "No. God, no. It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Rachel? Help me understand." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "He makes me feel seen. Important. The way you used to before work and routine and mortgage payments became our entire relationship." Her words hit me like physical blows. Not because they were cruel, but because hidden within the accusation was a truth I couldn't deny. We had become comfortable, predictable. I had taken our marriage for granted, assumed it would always be there. But so had she. "He makes you feel seen." I paced the kitchen, unable to stay still. "And that justifies everything. What about our vows, Rachel? What about the life we've built?" She flinched. "I'm not justifying anything. I'm trying to explain how things evolved." "Evolved," I repeated, like some natural process I should have expected. "That's not what I meant." I stopped pacing and leaned against the counter. "How long?" Rachel stared into her tea. "We met 4 months ago at the Foundation's planning meeting. It was just professional at first. And then we started having coffee after meetings. Then lunch. We'd talk about everything. Work, dreams, frustrations. Things I used to talk to you about before you became so absorbed in that downtown project." The accusation stung, partly because there was truth to it. I had been working longer hours on the lakefront tower development, coming home exhausted, often missing dinner. But that didn't excuse what she'd done. So it's my fault you developed feelings for another man. No. Her eyes flashed. I'm not blaming you for my choices. I'm telling you how it happened. Has he been in our house? The thought made my skin crawl. In our bed? God, no. Connor, I told you it wasn't physical. Yet, I added, it wasn't physical yet. She had no response to that. I rubbed my hand across my face, feeling the stubble scratch my palm. I need to know everything, Rachel. No more half-truths. Over the next hour, Rachel detailed her relationship with Adrian Thompson, a 38-year-old financial advisor who volunteered with the Cancer Foundation in honor of his late mother. They'd started with innocent coffees that turned into long lunches, then text messages throughout the day, phone calls on her drive home, inside jokes, shared secrets, an emotional affair in everything but name. He knows you exist, she said quietly. I talk about you. How considerate, I replied bitterly. Does he know I saw you two last night? That I walked out while you were in his arms? She shook her head, tears falling freely now. I didn't realize you'd left until the event was winding down. When I couldn't find you, I thought maybe you'd stepped outside for air or gone to the hotel bar. And when I didn't answer your calls, your texts, I panicked, she whispered. I knew then that you must have seen us. That's when I realized how it would look to you. How it would look, I said flatly. Not how it was. Connor, please. Have you told him about last night? About this conversation? She hesitated, which was answer enough. You've spoken to him today. It wasn't a question. He texted to make sure I got home safely, she admitted. I told him you weren't here when I got back. Did you tell him why? Another hesitation. Yes. I laughed humorlessly. So he knows his competition is onto him. It's not a competition, isn't it? I pushed away from the counter. Because from where I'm standing, it sure as hell feels like one. And apparently, I've been losing for months without even knowing I was playing. The question hung in the air between us. Was my marriage over? Was I ready for it to be? I need time to think, I said finally. And space. Rachel's eyes widened. What does that mean? It means I'm not sure I can sleep in the same house with you right now, knowing you've been sharing parts of yourself with another man for months. Connor, please. We can work through this. People recover from these things all the time. Some do, I acknowledged. But I'm not sure I want to. She flinched as if I'd struck her. You don't mean that. Don't tell me what I mean. My voice was frighteningly calm. You lost that right when you decided our marriage wasn't enough for you. I moved past her toward her bedroom, pulling the suitcase from the closet. The same one we'd used for our anniversary trip to Michigan just 6 months ago. Rachel followed, hovering in the doorway as I methodically packed enough clothes for a week. Where will you go? She asked, her voice small. Tyler's, probably. Or a hotel. I haven't decided. For how long? I closed the suitcase and turned to face her. I don't know, Rachel. I honestly don't know if I'm coming back at all. She started crying again, but I felt strangely detached from her tears. They seemed hollow after everything she'd revealed. Was she crying because she was genuinely sorry? Or because she'd been caught? Because she feared the consequences of her actions? What about Adrian? I asked. Will you keep seeing him while I'm gone? She looked stricken. No, of course not. Why not? If he makes you feel so understood, so seen, why deprive yourself just because your husband found out? Because I love you, she whispered. I never stopped loving you. The words should have comforted me. Instead, they made me angry. That's not love, Rachel. Love doesn't seek attention from other men when things get difficult. Love doesn't hide text messages and secret lunches. Love doesn't slow dance with someone else while your husband watches. I lifted the suitcase off the bed. I'm going to grab some things from the bathroom. Then I'll be gone. Can we at least talk before you make any final decisions? Please. Maybe with a counselor. I paused at the door. Maybe. But not today. 10 minutes later, I was loading my suitcase into my car. Rachel stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, watching me prepare to leave our life together. For a moment, I almost weakened. Almost told her we'd figure it out. Almost walked back up those steps and into the arms that had held another man just hours before. Instead, I got in my car and drove away, watching her figure grow smaller in my rearview mirror until she disappeared completely. As I turned onto the main road, my phone buzzed with a text. I expected it to be Rachel with another apology or plea. Instead, it was Tyler. How'd it go? You okay? I typed a quick response. She admitted everything. Heading to you now. We'll explain when I get there. His reply came immediately. Doors open. Beer's cold. Take your time. For the first time since the gala, I felt something other than anger or hurt. Gratitude. At least in this storm, I wasn't completely alone. The hotel room had become my temporary home. After 3 days at Tyler's, I decided I needed more space, both physical and emotional. The Marriott downtown wasn't fancy, but it was clean and anonymous, with a decent bar in the lobby where I could nurse a whiskey while contemplating the ruins of my marriage. Rachel had texted daily, alternating between apologies, updates about mundane household matters, and increasingly desperate pleas for us to talk. I'd responded only to practical questions, maintaining a wall of silence that I knew was hurting her. Maybe that was the point. A week after walking out of her house, I was sitting at the hotel bar when my phone lit up with a familiar name, Tyler. Hey, I answered. Just checking in, he said. Haven't heard from you in a couple days. I'm alive. Surviving. Rachel called me. I straightened. What? When? This morning. She's worried about you. Says you barely respond to her messages. Did you tell her where I am? No, Tyler said firmly. That's not my place. But man, you can't hide in a hotel forever. He was right, of course. I'd taken a week off work, citing a family emergency, but reality was waiting. Bills, deadlines, decisions about whether my marriage could, or should, be saved. I know, I sighed. I'm just not ready to face her yet. I get that. But there's something else you should know. Tyler paused. I did some asking around about this Adrian guy. My grip tightened on the phone. And he's been seen with other women before Rachel. Always married. Always involved with the foundation. Word is he likes the challenge. A cold fury settled in my chest. She's just another conquest to him. Looks that way. Thought you should know. After hanging up, I stared at my drink, Tyler's words echoing in my head. Rachel wasn't special to Adrian, just another married woman to pursue, another ego boost. The revelation should have made me angrier, but instead, it clarified something I've been wrestling with all week. This wasn't about Adrian. It was about us, about what our marriage had become before he ever entered the picture. I pulled out my phone and, for the first time in days, initiated contact with my wife. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., neutral ground. The coffee shop on Wilson Street. Her response was immediate. Rachel, I'll be there. Thank you, Connor. As I set down my phone, I realized I'd already made my decision. I just wasn't sure if Rachel was ready to hear it. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, securing a table in the back corner. The place was half empty, a small mercy. Whatever happened next, I didn't want an audience. Rachel walked in at exactly 7 p.m. She'd lost weight in the week we'd been apart, her clothes hanging loosely on her frame. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of her usual polished style. She spotted me and hesitated before approaching, as if unsure of her welcome. I gestured to the chair across from me, and she sat, her movements careful, measured. Thank you for meeting me, she said quietly. I nodded. Do you want something to drink? I'm fine. She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit she'd had since our wedding day. How are you? Managing. I studied her face, searching for something. Remorse, fear, love, all were present, along with an exhaustion that mirrored my own. Have you been in contact with Adrian? She flinched but held my gaze. He's called and texted. I haven't responded. Why not? If he makes you feel so seen, so understood. Because I realized what he was really doing. Her voice hardened. He doesn't care about me. I'm just another conquest. Another married woman he could charm away from her husband. Tyler told you. She shook her head. He didn't have to. I did my own research after you left. Found 2 other women from the foundation who had the same experience. He has a pattern. I nodded slowly. And what about us? Do we have a pattern too? Yes, she admitted. We take each other for granted. We stop trying. We forget why we chose each other in the first place. Her honesty surprised me. I haven't been the husband you deserve, I acknowledged. I've been distant, absorbed in work, and I should have told you what I needed instead of seeking it elsewhere. Tears welled in her eyes. So where does that leave us? I'd asked myself that question all week, lying awake in my hotel room, staring at the ceiling. I'd weighed all our years together against the pain of her betrayal, balanced what we'd built against what we'd lost. I don't know if I can trust you again, I said finally. but I don't know if I'm ready to throw away 12 years either. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to try. The words surprised me even as I spoke them. Not promises. Not forgiveness yet. But trying. With boundaries. With counseling. Relief flooded her face, quickly tempered with caution. When will you come home? Not yet. I need more time. But soon, maybe. She nodded, understanding the gift I was offering. Not reconciliation. Not yet, but possibility. A door left slightly ajar instead of slammed shut. As we walked out of the coffee shop into the cool Chicago evening, Rachel stopped under a streetlight, her face half in shadow. I love you, Connor. I never stopped, even when I lost my way. I didn't say it back. Couldn't. Not yet. But for the first time in days, I felt something other than anger and hurt. Something that might, with time and work, grow back into trust. I'll call you tomorrow, I said, and walked to my car alone, knowing that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that leave the future unwritten.
Bye.